lengos, yo lengos, city lengos. Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota sabelani, abafazi bayalila, yo lengos, city lengos, yo lengos.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Vuyolutseke, and I'm a director from the Shared Value Africa Initiative. Really just to say a quick word of welcome and why we are here today. We as a Shared Value Africa Initiative advocate for business to profitably address social and environmental issues through the shared value business management concept. And we knew very early on that in our work that you cannot address social challenges without talking about gender-based violence and gender equality in our society across the continent, across the world. And we launched the hashtag #ITSNOTOK movement to really be a movement that is owned by all, to look at how you can take part, participate, raise your voice, and help fight GBV in our society. Through various multi-sectoral engagements since the launch of ITSNOTOK in June of 2020, we have worked in various ways to really grow the voice, contribute to growing the voice in this fight against gender-based violence. This includes research that we commissioned with the University of Johannesburg, various awareness campaigns that we have led and have had partners join us on in the last year and a half, as well as participating in the National Strategic Plan that is led by the government, ultimately to engage various sectors to make sure that we go beyond just talking about the fight against gender-based violence, but actually affecting change and seeing the dial moving in this fight against gender-based violence. So today we are having another engagement to that effect as part of this 16 days of activism that are very important in our calendar, but also this is a fight that goes beyond 16 days of activism. We are here today to underline the importance of doing. If we intentionally act together to not only raise awareness, but to change behavior, we are now making progress in the fight against gender-based violence. And I want to thank you all for being here with us this morning. I want to thank our various partners who are here with us today, and we're going to be speaking on the panel later. Kaya 959, represented here today by Pamela Modene, Provantage Media Group, the Companies and Intellectual Properties Commission. We have Workforce Healthcare, Ask Africa, as well as mentioned earlier, the National Strategic Plan, represented by SIBS. But really for us, it's to look at how we can come together and from these conversations have action-oriented outcomes that we will be empowered to know exactly what we can do and how we can take this further. Without much further ado, I would like to bring to the stage our moderator, our host, our facilitator for today's session, Pamela Modene from Kaya 959. Thank you so much, Pamela, for your leading us today.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to welcome everybody for joining this webinar today. It's a very, very important one. As Vuyo said, my name is Pamela Modene. I am here representing, first of all, myself, which is, I think is very, very important to count myself in to say, every single one of us has to add our voice. So I'm adding my voice. So I'd love to thank everybody who's joined us. I'd love to thank all the corporate partners as well. Everyone is also here pro bono. Everyone has decided it's important for us to add our voice in a meaningful way. And as Vuyo said, to also make sure that we affect change. How will that change come about? If we don't add our resources, if we do not add our voices, if we do not actively do something. So it is very, very important that this collaboration happens at the kind of broadness that we're seeing it happen. What we would also like to see going forward are more voices, more corporates, more NPOs coming into the fray, just so that we have the kind of change that is required, the kind of movement that is required. This is a movement. It doesn't begin and end with 16 days. We will need more hands on deck to get this needle to move. So as Will has said, without further ado, we're just going to go straight into it. And I want to invite here Sibongile Mthembu from the presidency to just give us a bit of an outline of the gender-based violence national strategic program, that what I think everyone needs to be behind, and everyone needs to first of all unpack, understand, so that we can then take this conversation forward, so that it does become something that we start working very, very strategically towards. Sibongile, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Pimelo, and thank you for affording us the opportunity to also speak about the work that has been done through a number of years by women who've carried us, normally I say have carried us since 1956, and we are here today still fighting the cause. If I can quickly share my screen. Sorry, yeah. Hope everybody can see my screen. I just wanted to divide my presentation into two and walk us in this journey that we've been taking surrounding GBV, which is gender-based violence and femicide. As introduced earlier, my name is Sibongile Mthembu. I sit in the private office of the president responsible for gender, regionally, nationally, and globally. The president has, announced publicly in many of his speeches that GBV has become a crisis in our country, and it is a magnitude of a problem, and we've carried it historically in this country, and it needs everybody to participate if we're about to eradicate it. The journey that we've taken since 2018, when there was a big march with women who were wearing black and red, who called themselves the Total Shutdown. They marched in the streets of South Africa. We had about 24 marches, and they had 24 demands. And in 2018, it was the mark of our democracy being 24 years old. Hence, they had 24 demands. What has happened after that? There was a presidential summit that the president has called. It was held the 1st and the 2nd of March. In that presidential summit, a declaration came out, and it took a while for that declaration to be signed. It was signed when a sexual offences court was opened in Boysens, which was one of the courts that we have that deals specifically with gender-based violence. It was signed, and after that document or the declaration was signed, the president introduced an interim steering committee that would deal with issues that needed to be taken forward. Then this national strategic plan was drafted by this committee. But within that, Parliament also had the caucus. Parliament sat for the first time in the world of South Africa, where they sat and discussed GBV, and something emerged from that meeting of the Parliament, where an emergency response action plan was also introduced. It was supposed to be a 6-month plan that had 1.6 billion reprioritized. It was not new money that came from Treasury. Government have to change some of their planning and reprioritize gender-based violence within 6 months and see if that needle, like we said earlier, Pimelo, can change. And then came the approval of our national strategic plan after it was drafted. It was approved the 11th of March 2020 as we're going to the COVID lockdowns. And what has happened since? Government departments have been asked to align this plan with their APPs so that they can report annually on these plans. It is not just annual report, there's monthly trackings that have been happening as well, because the president has been asking departments to give him feedback monthly on what they're doing when it comes to gender-based violence. Why has gender-based violence been so focused in the country? Like I said, it's been a crisis. And then what does this document or our plan, we spoke about it even last night, Pimelo. I said, there's a plan that we have as a country, which is a 10-year plan. And when I'm saying it was launched in 2018, it means we are left with about 8.5 years to finalize this plan and make changes that need to be made in this country. What is in this document particularly? The document focuses on 6 pillars. If you can see there on top, those are the 6 pillars that it focuses on. The first pillar talks on accountability, coordination, and leadership. What is that? It says harness all responses to this crisis and also strengthen accountability within institutions and within individuals. We all need to be accountable and hold our leaders accountable. We started the collaborative, which is a multi-sectoral collaborative where we sit because there was supposed to be a council. The council hasn't set because of legislation, the Council for Gender-Based Violence. It hasn't set because legislation took a while. In the opening space that was created, or the gap that was created by this missing council, we've started what we call the National Strategic Plan Collaborative, where we're finding different sectors sitting weekly, monthly, to move the needle and saying, we take responsibility. That is the leadership that we're talking about. We've got CIPC with us today. We've also approached them and said, are you able to help us hold leaders leaders that are leading private sector also accountable? So we're focusing on that pillar 1. The reporting as well is focusing on that pillar 1. We also spoke of the prevention, which is our pillar 2. Prevention is very key. At the end of the day, we do not want to deal with victims or survivors of gender-based violence, but we want to prevent it before it happens. That is the advocacy campaigns. This is what we're about today. We're looking at pillar 1 and pillar 2. We're saying we've got a campaign that is saying, stop, it is not okay. How are we managing it or aligning it with accountability? We're saying if you are preventing it, you're taking accountability, and already you are implementing pillar 1 and 2. And then we've got pillar 3 that deals with the whole of justice, the justice system, from your police to your MPA, to your correctional services, to your justice. It encompasses all that layer of justice. We're saying victims want justice. You do not want to be raped or abused today and your case is finalized after 5 years, and the line of questioning and the justice system focusing on the survivor instead of on the perpetrator, who's supposed to try and prove that he's not guilty. But the questioning is so invasive when it comes to the survivors of violence. And then pillar 4 speaks on responding and how do we care and heal each other after we've gone through the trauma. So it addresses the survivor focus response that as a country we need to have, the psychosocial services that we need to build on, the treatment, secondary victimization that we get from the justice system, from the health system, and from your neighbors as well, because you are labeled after you are raped. That's why sometimes victims do not want to come out, because they feel that there's so much pressure after they've come out that they've been abused or raped. And the most important one as well is the economic power. We're saying a lot of women are staying in these relationships because of lack of resources. The person who's got the money is the one who's controlling the narrative in the house. And they stay longer because they cannot afford to feed their kids, to put roof over their heads. So they stay on these relationships. How do we then empower women to start businesses, to get employed, to capacitate them so that they can move from these abusive relationships? And the key one again, which is the last one, is research and information management. We as the country, we've been working in silos for so long where DSD doesn't know what health is doing, but both of them, they're looking after the survivor. We're saying, can there be better management of information? Can there be research done, research that will inform our interventions as a country, instead of adopting interventions that are done somewhere else in the world and saying, in America, this is what they are doing, and missing the context of the country. And with all these, we're saying, let's elevate accountability, let's elevate prevention and respond to what has been happening in the country. And Dumelo, thank you very much for affording me this opportunity to just say a few words on the strategy that we have as a country. And I'm hoping that people who are here will investigate more what we've been doing and want to join in and lend a hand, especially from the private sector, civil society, the community at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sibs. And you've pointed something very important out, that it will have to be collaboration. It will have to be everybody coming together. I'm going to pick up on exactly that point. How does corporate get to be a part of this? How does corporate hold people accountable? To give us our keynote address on this very issue will be Professor Gustav Dalal. He's not in South Africa, so we really appreciate his participation today. And we were just talking to him yesterday. As we are in our summer, even though our weather is a little bit erratic, he was right deep in the middle of snow yesterday. And so we hope you're warm, Prof. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this conversation.
Thank you. Can you hear me and see me?
You are sounding wonderful. Welcome.
Perfect. Just for your kind information, my temperature is now -20 degrees Celsius. And it's full of snow, and it's where I am right now, 200 kilometers northwest. Yesterday, it broke all records. It was -42.7.
We hope you're warm. You must come to South Africa next time. Thanks, Prof.
Okay. So now I'm starting at why we need the business support to eradicate this. Historically, I describe gender-based violence as historical event, and many European and OECD countries has almost reduced significantly. No one can say that eradicate the problem, but yes, they reduced the prevalence. And I just want to say, just let me fix my watch so I should not cross your limit. Yes. So there were long history in the World Health Organization. Before 2012, we had consecutive some meetings with researchers and ministers. All countries, or at least majority of the countries, were believing that gender-based violence is nothing but a problem for the police or legal system. It's not a problem for health, or it's not a problem for other sectors. But to make the story short, finally we had a long meeting a couple of times, and now WHO has admitted, all ministers had signed, and in the World Health Assembly 2017 or 2016, I forget, they had this resolution that this is a health problem, a public health problem. This is a public health problem. And from that perspective, and I did a lot from my health economics perspective on these issues. So I just wanted to present you. This is what you can see over the last 10 years, almost 10 years. There is almost no change if you look at the figures, and this is the DALYs for gender-based violence and femicides. Imagine last 10 years, we have almost no change in that, and this is per 1,000 population. So in South Africa, per 1,000 population, last 10 years, we have almost no change in disability adjusted life years. But at the same time, all the social parameters has changed significantly. But what we are seeing in South Africa, it's almost no change. And look, these poor kids, I want to say them as kids, 5 to 14 years. I don't want to say them teenager or blah, blah, blah. They are just a little older than kids, our kids, your kids. And here, 15 to 29, it's almost same. It's for the all age, 5 to 14 and 15 to 29. That means there has been no effective intervention in South African society. We could not see. And last night I estimated what last year you have lost almost 0.5% of your GDP just for this issue. We all are shouting, we don't have money, we don't have money, but we don't know actually how to prevent the leakage of the money. And I just want to explain like this. This is our life path. Generally in South African society or African society, 0 to 25 years, from childhood to early adulthood, we don't produce anything. We just consume from the society, from the parents, from the families, from the society. And after retirement, again, we don't produce anything. So we just consume from the society, from the kids, from the, I am saying kids repeatedly, from the offsprings and families and relatives. But this 35 years of productivity actually feeding the rest 35 years. It could be more actually, because we don't know how long a person will alive, maybe 75, 80. So in that case, it should be 45. So if we can produce this 35 years significantly, only in that case, the rest of the society, that means this part and this part will get benefit. And so that's a red block. We need to have full productivity here. But if there is some problem, it could be 10 years or 5 years or 20 years. So what's happening? You are actually adding more burden to this side or that side. That means at the overall in the whole South African economy, the productivity is going down and consumption is going up. And that's why the financial gap is getting wider. And this is one example from America. You know, they are the most capitalist country. They work every time from morning till late night to get more and more dollar. So this is a breakout. Even just don't please compare with South Africa. This is American economy. With that work culture, in total 35 or 40 years, they exactly work 10.5 years in the whole life. So just imagine what's happening for your own country. And now if something is getting leakage, for example, GBV has very significant, I had a couple of research articles. GBV has significant impact on productivity and empowerment, especially the economic issues. It's significantly affected by GBV. So in those countries, in Africa or in Asia or in the low and middle income countries, including South Africa, where the GBV is a real socio-economic issue and public health issue. So that means we are making our leakage system wider year-wise. So that's why, to me, we all are suffering. And how is it? So just I wanted to give you one example that our health is nothing but economic good. For example, you can buy one sandwich. Exactly, we buy our health because we consume our health, because if you feel better when you are healthier. But if someone apart from your own body, another person is providing or perpetuating your body or mind or sexual organ, what's happening? Your consumption of your own health is going down. And when you are not feeling healthier, you are not feeling better. When you are not feeling better, that means you are not producing optimally. So even I am at my work, for example, in private sector ABC, but when last night I got some perpetration, so today I am at office with my physical attire, but I am not feeling well. My mind is very down. My health is very down. I am actually not consuming oil. That means I am not producing oil. So what's happening? My investment on health is getting worse and worse. And I wanted to break it out you can make it in one day. Just for example, I make it in 1 year, 365 days. We had only 4 options when we invest on our health. One part, we improve our health. Another part, we produce home goods and services. Another part we keep for our illness, and the rest part is work. And leisure comes between producing home goods and work. But now when the people, I mean the women or the female generation is getting more and more violence, their improving health part is reducing, producing home good parts is increasing, loss for illness is increasing. So where they are compensating at work. That means their work ability is going down and down and down. And that is why most of the small and medium industries, if they employ a good number of skilled labor, but don't control this violence culture, a big percentage of their profit actually swiped out. And how we can see it? This is our life track. So for example, 20 or 25 years, we are in children or unproductive group, and the 35 to 40 years, depending on the country, we are in the productive age. That I have already explained. But now here is coming the economic burden. So non-healthy people means less productivity. So if your economy has more and more non-healthy people, then the burden of the society is getting heavier. And when the burden is getting heavier, on the heap of sorrow, you are adding more and more gender-based violence. So the burden is getting heaviest. And that's why most of the African countries are suffering, because even this is a very, very strong leakage channel for the economic resources, but our policymakers are not understanding. And why it's happening, let me explain it. Before that, I should give you one very strong model for integration, because we all are media and the international media and some experts are always shouting that we need integration, and why we need integration and how they have no solution. So here I am giving you one tips that this is the low and high integration at the horizontal level, and here is the vertical level. And this integration is between the public, between the NGOs, between the government, and between the private sector. So all are considered in this integration model. And what we are thinking about, it's contracting. In the public sector, in the government sector, in the NGO sector, we are trying to contract. Okay, I will give you this money, so please you do this work. So everyone, the society is to some extent running under contracting business. And the next phase is coordination. So when you need a high level of vertical integration, you need to coordinate between these players, these 4 key players. And these 4 key players, when you are thinking about high coordination, actually at the same time, you need to think about cooperation. Coordination has not so strict juridic formulation, but cooperation is more like country to country, commune to commune, private sector to government sector, NGO. So their cooperation should be in the mostly in the written basis. And when this is written, then it's coming the collaboration. So if your policymakers and including the private sectors, because these two are the money making. So if they believe that you need more horizontal integration, then you should go for cooperation. If that system believes more vertical integration, then also you should go for cooperation. But unfortunately, in South Africa or in African countries, what's happening? We are mostly emphasizing on contracting. And that's why the leakage is, again, I am just giving you where our private sectors or business houses are lacking. to stop the gap or stop the leakage. So here is the main mechanism why even they have a bigger role for the society, but they are actually suffering to stop their own leakage, and that's why they are getting less and less business, and that's why they are coming more opportunity to create falsehood, to get profit, to widen the channel of earning more money. But to me, when I was analyzing, I felt that this is the major problem why the most of the African societies are still struggling to get the integration of the women, of the girls to the mainstream society. And our previous speaker has already mentioned that what's happening. So I'm not going to, you are more experienced from your own perspective, but from top of the, from bird's eye view, I can explain that this is the reason why the South African and most of the African countries are actually struggling. And here I am giving you one more example. Recently, I presented this model to an crisis management world conference. So here we had the gender-based violence, leaders, people, administration, and companies. And what's happening? The leadership, they are always trying to get in a comfort zone for safe and comfort of their own. So all, I can't say, maybe 99% leaders, they try to be in their comfort zone to be safe and comfort. Where is the people? The people actually are always under fear and stress. And think about the women. They're always, oh yeah, I will not go out. Someone will catch up me and rape me. Even the oldest woman carrying the same trauma throughout her life. So when the women are not moving freely under the fear and stress condition, so what's happening? They're trying to give some excuses and lack of confidence. So if one economic productive person has these two, excuse and lack of confidence, in that case, you can understand that what's happening to their productivity to add to the GDP or GNP. And in the next stage, it's coming administration. They are always in the learning and developing phase. They will never say we did the mistake. They will also say we learned from our mistake. So any country, the administration is always like hide and seek position. They never confess their fault or confess they are guilty. So what they are trying? They are trying to say we are learning and trying to solve the problem. And most of the time they had all know attitude. I know everything. A policymaker, he knows everything. He doesn't need to consult with the researchers. She does not need to consult with the expert in that field because she or he knows everything. That is the biggest dilemma of the administration of any country. And most of the time they had the balancing skill because they can balance between the leaders and the people. So when they are balancing very wisely, they are balancing. Actually, they are widening the leakage. And the last is coming the companies, the private sector. They are always towards their growth and development. They have their own vision. Okay, next year I should have 10 billion more profit. They have their leadership, trained leadership, how to squeeze the society and get the money in their pocket. And they have their own milestones. Okay, next 10 years, I should have 2 more companies or 3 more companies. And they have their new profit goals. So this is the private company. But where is coming the social responsibility? Can you see the social responsibility? It's missing. To me, most of the time, when we say about social responsibility or social capital, it's just for the researchers. I'm coming to that later. So what's happening? Most of the African countries are playing with the blame game. So companies are blaming the policymakers. They are blaming the people. They are blaming the, so each one is blaming each other, but no one is trying to solve the problem. And that's happening because we did not develop a system. We had missed in our historical failure to develop a system. As we could not develop our system, So these four players are actually blaming each other, and at the same time, the economy is losing a big amount of resources. But in this four player, they never developed the system and never tried to develop the system. At the same time, even for example, the government and the policymakers and public all are aware that GBV is a great problem, but no one is systematically focusing or emphasizing on the issue. So what's happening? This is just in our discussion. The perpetrator is perpetrating and the victims are getting more and more victimized. And so in this whole mechanism, the global scenario, the GBV is vanishing and our women resources are also vanishing gradually. And this is the scenario, what actually I think. For anyone, when you express anything, I like to express like, this is, I think, I'm thinking so big. And when I'm thinking so big, if you ask me to write down, I'll be smaller. And when you will ask me to say to the others, then you will be much smaller. And actually what you are understanding, that is much smaller. So in this scenario, what's happening? So there is a big gap for transferring the knowledge and expertise between the people, policymakers, business houses, and researchers. And as we have this big gap between transferring and communicating, that's why all in our economy and in our society are suffering. And I can give one example how the researchers and people, because people are providing the tax, and based on the tax money, all are getting the benefit. And plus the business houses are getting profit by selling their product and services. So when these are at the bottom, people are at the bottom, but researchers cannot communicate to them. And people, even researchers are asking to people that, but it's not going to the policymakers. And as the policymakers and business houses are having the liaison under the table, so that means these four key players are actually limping between these four bubbles. And that is why we are doing the so many conferences and webinars. And my question is that for whom we are discussing? We spend billions of dollars for organizing seminars, conferences, and meetings, but for whom? Who is listening? We, the researchers, are listening, or we, the people, are listening? No one is interacting with each other. As we are not interacting with each other, the problem is remaining as problem. And for what we are doing that? Are we really interested to prevent it? Or we are just making some seminars and okay, we are very satisfied by our heart, we did something. So to me, this sorts of 16 days campaign or 365 days campaign, this is nothing. Personally, I don't believe this Father's Day or Mother's Day or Sister's Day or so many days we have full with the calendar pages. But for whom we are doing, we must think from the beginning, because this is beyond consumerism. This is beyond any financial issues. First, I must be healthier. Only then I can produce, and then coming all those consumerism and everything, market business. And when shall we, the people, should understand? That is my question. As we can unite and understand, then everyone, all other three players I have discussed throughout the morning, those three key players can understand if we, the people, raise our voice. But unfortunately, we did not do that. We are making it a very small group. But if we join small groups to a bigger group, they will listen. So I have my proposition that GBV response should be binary, yes or no. There is no if, then let's see what happens next. No option, just yes or no. I should prevent it or just let it go. There is no in between, because if there is in between, that's why our societies are suffering. We did so many things in between. We never say that stop. So I just say no, stop. Do you? Because why I am asking you, in 2015, when we had this first ministerial meeting in Mexico, we had this symbol for the GBV, no. Just raise your hand and say no. So this symbol is beginning of preventing GBV. And thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to have any cooperation or collaboration with you. And sorry, I could not explain more because of the time constraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much for all of that and a lot that you've given us to think about. I just want to also open the floor up for any questions at this point from for Professor Dalal and see maybe if there's anything else that you want to bring up. I'll open it up to the audience. There was a question that came in, Prof, that said, you know, what about issues of boys? How do we then add value to young boys?
Yes, it takes a lot of time because it's don't think about boys and girls. Think about teenagers or childhood. Say in this way, if you why because of there are so many studies. We have so many studies. From where they learn it. First, we have to check because I have published so many articles and I have shown that this GBV actually transfer generation after generation. So if a child, a boy, witness that his father is beating the mother, then he exactly replicate the same when he becomes adult. I had so many studies, and that's why we need to sit. And always also one thing is that why you are raising the question that boys should know. You instead you give them the power. You give them, because I have been with the Safe Community Program, and where I worked with the community people for last 15 years very closely in many countries. And there I don't have time right now, but I can give you some examples in Japan, even in Thailand, in Taiwan, even in Iran, what they're doing when the community is getting involved. Because if you just teach the boys, it will not work. On the other hand, if you teach at the kindergarten that this is the failure, this is the system, we should not do it. So why we teach ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4 at the very early age? So similarly, why we are not teaching at the very early age that this is not good? Why we are not teaching them what is good, what is bad? If we can teach them at the same time when they're learning ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4, at the same time teach them this is not a good one. This is a very bad one, irrespective of the gender. This is a bad one. And if you can inject this concept at the very, very early childhood, then she or he may carry for the whole life. Please.
Hi, I'm Jenny Black from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm a gender-based violence activist and have been working quite a lot with the gender-based violence KZN and through Women's Parliament, trying to fix systems that I can see that are incorrect. Our 6-pillar plan is fabulous in verbal written form, but if you're looking at it and you see it finding it's not working provincially because certain groups are excluding other activists out of being involved to the point that they can no longer function financially or anything, should we not then reopen and re-look at our pillars and work out a proper aspect on how to operate where everybody who is an activist for gender-based violence has access to resources and has access to help? That's my first part of my question. The second part of my question is, should we not really go back to basics and look at the start and really start at the basics of where it comes to reporting to police, etc., getting everything done in the correct manner and start that process all over again in the education of how the police treat the public, etc., and that, because we're failing badly in that respect. Thank
Yes,
you for the
Jenny,
time.
I can give you my experience from Durban, because I believe that the first costing report from South Africa, it's written by me and Suraya. Then I was in the UKZ and for evaluating another project, and we did a lot of study in around Durban. And there initially we met so many so many police officials and jurists, I mean, from the legal system. But that you should, I was trying to say in the beginning that this is not a problem for the police. This is a problem for the doctors, for the nurses. So if you shift the burden from police to the doctors and nurses, and if this is a problem for the school, if you shift the burden from doctors and nurses or health sector to the education sector, then this is not a problem for the school. This is actually a problem for the social justice. So shift in the social justice ministry. So if you involve, because this is a very, very complex interdisciplinary problem. And that's why we are coming out with a new concept of intersectionality within in each sector. And there I also had a couple of studies with social autopsy. We actually, physician cut the body and check where is the problem and where is the tumor. So the same way, what I did, I cut the society from very grassroots level to the top policymakers. And there we found and that why the problem still exists. So I think you, the activities or activists, need to go into deeper and try to understand why. Don't think about all those theories and what you have read, what you've done. Go to the reality, try to dig the hole and get the peanut. Okay, that's the beginning of the problem. And if you can try to get, my suggestion is go for the different social autopsy strategies. And if you try to get that why this is happening, you can get one stage ahead to solve the problem, because we all researchers or activists are trying to solve the problem from our own perspective. I always suggest, I travel 52 countries for different policy issues and researches. So I always advocate that put yourself other side of the table. If you put yourself other side of the table, then you will better understand the problem. So if you instead of thinking and taking the model from another or intervention strategies from another setup or another context, dig up the hole and try to get the issues from other side of the table. They have their own solution. I have evidences from many countries. I don't have time now, but you can contact me anytime. I can give you so many evidences that how, when we actually put the empowerment other side, the victims, they have their own solutions. And the problem for South Africa, I got the result from when I was studying last few days for this presentation. I found that because I published that report in 2009, if I remember correctly, or 2008. So last 12, 13 years, there is no change. There was no change in the society. There is no change in the research protocol, because you are not going to the other side of the table. And that's why the problem persists. Your microphone.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for your question. Thank you very much, Prof. Dalal. I see you, Ruben, and I see many of you coming through. What I'm going to ask is that many of these questions we'll be able to ventilate in our panel discussion. So I'm going to just maybe start the panel discussion now, and then we can come back to some of the issues that we want to come back to. I'm going to give an opportunity to our panelists to just maybe for 3 minutes if possible, for shorter, to introduce themselves, and then we can kick off the panel discussion. I'll start with Chris Hitchings.
Excuse me, I should say goodbye because I have the next meeting now. If you have any question, please feel free to contact me, and I could not explain in this 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Feel free to contact me. I am more than willing to help anyone if you want to really solve the problem. Thank you and bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that keynote. Very insightful, Professor Kustaf Dalal there. And he is also available on social media platforms if you want to get in touch with him directly. But I just want to also remind you that you can find us as well at It's Not Okay Africa. The hashtag is It's Not Okay Africa. The website is itsnotokay.africa. So do get in touch if you like, and you can also see some of the programs that have been embarked on. Okay, I'm going to start very quickly with our panel discussion, and I want to bring on to the conversation and for your introduction, Chris Hitchings, just for 2-3 minutes if possible of hello and who you are, and then we can then bring in the other panelists as well. Morning, Chris.
Morning, Pamela. Thanks very much for the opportunity to participate on the forum on behalf of the ProVantage Media Group. I am proudly South African in so many contexts. I really love this country and her people, but sadly in the context of gender-based violence, I'm not proud of our country. I'm saddened and ashamed by the data, as I believe we all should be. I'm the father of 3 boys, and I wanted to grow up in a normalized society where women are not bullied, abused, and objectified. The ProVantage Media Group, our management team, and our employees are proud to add our voices to this movement to support the GBV National Strategic Plan in its fight to eliminate gender-based violence in all its forms and work to restore normality to our society. For us, it starts about creating awareness about gender-based violence and getting this topic out in the open. Silence breeds violence, which is why we are donating 6 million rand worth of outdoor advertising inventory to spreading the message of this campaign. ProVantage reaches millions of people every day through our billboard and digital screen networks on highways, suburbs, taxi ranks, malls, airports, and golf courses. Gender-based violence cuts across all socio-economic sectors, and it's important that this campaign does too. Gender-based violence is a symptom of our dysfunctional past, of unmanaged rage, unprocessed trauma, of toxic masculinity, of absentee fathers and missing role models, of drug and alcohol abuse, of a lack of options, and the inability to self-regulate. Dr. Paddy Pampalis of the Ubuntu Foundation talks about this issue and uses words and phrases like compassionate accountability and fierce understanding, moving beyond blaming and shaming and seeking instead to fully understand. Raising the level of social consciousness, shifting toxic attitudes towards women, we need to provide support to both victims and perpetrators. And we need to start by educating children. There's an important youth development project called What About the Boys, which aims to help in the quest to reinvent masculinity and identify and address these underlying causes of gender-based violence at an early stage. This isn't somebody else's problem, it's our collective problem. It's not happening out there, it's happening right here. It's not happening to someone else, it's happening to you or your colleague or your sister or your mother, or maybe your wife or your Yes, of course it's happening in the townships, but it's also happening here in the suburbs. It's happening across the road and next door, and maybe in your home. It's not okay. It really isn't. It never was okay, and it never will be. It's time for change and for individuals and companies to speak out. ProVantage is proud to be playing our part in fighting this fight. Thanks, Pamela.
What a powerful speech there, Chris. Thank you very much for that introduction. I want to bring into the conversation as well Serena De Beer, who is also one of our panelists as well. Serena, thanks again for being with us, and maybe let me also give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and perhaps your opening speech.
Good day, I'm Serena De Beer. I'm the Managing Director at Ask Africa, and we are the research partner for the It's Not Okay campaign. Research, I believe, plays a fundamental role in honestly reflecting the voices of those we interview, contributing to a better society. We are a female-led market research organization touching the lives of millions of people when we interview them and give feedback to our clients and stakeholders, not excluding the lives of our staff and their families. We regard it as our business purpose to get involved practically by actively participating in the changes our country needs. I'm also a mother of 3 boys, and I therefore take it to really be my personal responsibility on a daily basis to lead them and to guide them with what's right and what's just and how to treat their fellow human beings and particularly women. GBV, I believe, is a systemic issue that needs to extend significantly beyond awareness. Research, I think, plays a vital role in driving awareness, understanding, and shedding light on the efficacy of interventions, enabling us, therefore, to objectively understand if we are indeed shifting the needle with regard to how South Africa and probably the world views GBV. I think scientific large-scale research projects will enable us with a baseline as to where South Africans are in their thinking about GBV, their awareness, their understanding, their attitudes, beliefs, and values. Systemically, it needs to extend significantly beyond awareness. We need to fully understand the root causes and the shifts in these sustainable solutions. We need behavior to change, and for that to happen, we need to start with values, beliefs, parenting, socializations, to just name a few. We need to have a deep understanding of GBV in all its forms. It seldom starts with physical violence, and it seldom is only physical violence and abuse. We need to understand it as a society in order to eradicate it.
Thank you very much, Serena. I want to also bring in Advocate Rory Fowler, who is also going to be joining this panel. Thank you so much for your time, Advocate. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for the introduction. My name is Rory Fowler. I'm the Commissioner of the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, a public entity. Well, we as an organization, when we look at the 16 days of activism against abuse meted out towards the vulnerable in our society, we take this extremely seriously because we inculcate within our organization and our broader community that we touch with what the work that we do, a stand of zero tolerance. Only those who are weak themselves in self-worth, integrity, courage, and respect would harm physically and emotionally women and children. The statistics of abuse in our country speak for themselves, and that more needs to be done and more need to take a stand to protect, nurture, and secure the rights of women and children, so that we, in all facets of society, public and private, deplore these acts. We look at the atrocities and we want those who deal with them to be punished severely, and that we also need to learn more about the behavior, that it is simply not accepted and it is simply not tolerated. The bit that we do as a small entity is that we are an organization with the majority of staff being women. We're an entity of about 500 staff, I think more than 3/4 of women. And even at the executive level, we've got a 50% split with the highest decision-making body, because we take and value the women participation in our organization as vitally important to strengthen us and to also hold us accountable and governed. Every year, at the 16 Days of Activism, we have multiple campaigns running throughout our entity, but also on our social media platforms and other forms of advertising that we do. Because, as I said, we take a hard line against such abuse. As the Registrar of Companies and Intellectual Property Rights, and we also known to be a credible regulator in the space within the economic cluster of government, we take a firm stance, and we also look at ways that we can improve on our partnerships and collaboration to deal more comprehensively and strategically with eradicating the scourge. But also as a transformative institution, we encourage women-owned businesses and promote entrepreneurship amongst women in all spheres of the economy. And we will be driving home this message in our new strategic plan through our education and awareness activities, but also to show the importance of women in all facets of the economy and growth of women-empowered and owned companies. We do not need tick box exercises, and this is much that we've seen, and I can see from many of the comments and chats there. We need more than that. We need more punishment. We need more targeted awareness campaigns with credible research and statistics to occur, and we also need a behavioral change, which all of us must take to heart in what we do in our daily lives. Those who continue to engage in such deplorable acts need to be held accountable for their actions. We need more government intervention to protect our beautiful women and children, not only at the policy and strategic level, but it needs to occur at the cold face of implementation on a daily basis. When women and children fight these battles, many times just to survive another day. we see our partnership with the Shared Value Africa initiative as a year-on-year growing one to create even greater awareness of this massive evil in society, and to play a more meaningful role in educating men in particular on such matters. We at the CIPC, because we're also responsible for administering the Companies Act, we have something called a Social and Ethics Committee, which we then brought into law. And the Social and Ethics Committee deals with the social impact that companies have on society, on the community at large. Not only do we look at the economic impact, because we know that it is multifaceted when it comes to the stand that companies must take, but also in this particular space. And therefore, we must have more reporting, we must have private sector initiatives which we look at taking a stand as far as this is concerned. So collaborating in partnerships for the worthy cause is what we will do. We are certainly happy to be here, and we will continue to participate and to spread the message wide and far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Voller. Navanya Naidu, you also joining this panel. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Pamela, and thank you for having us. My name is Navanya Naidu, and I'm the Director of Wellness at Workforce Healthcare. Workforce Healthcare is an organization that provides wellness in the workplace. So to all of these corporates whom we're trying to get their attention today, we are normally in there assisting and supporting their employees. Sadly, as an organization, we normally get to see the after effects of GBV. So once the person has been beat up, somebody has passed on, the children are now left without a mother, a sister, etc. These are the types of things that we see. And Professor Gustav made so many important points. And often we say to corporates, if your employees are not well and if they're not taken care of on the wellness side, it leads to issues of productivity. But we've never taken it as far as he mentioned in terms of the effect that it has on the entire economy. It's so important to understand that if somebody is not okay, it means that they're distracted at work. It means that you have absenteeism, you have presenteeism, and all of these things have an effect on the organization's bottom line, but also on the society as a whole. So it's critically important that corporates make it a choice to have these discussions with their employees. I think a lot of people also shy away from the topic because it can be one that is so sensitive, and most people don't know how to deal with it or how to deal with these discussion points. So we tend to, sweep it under the carpet, which means that people don't feel safe. Or women don't feel safe to come forward and say that I am affected and I need assistance and support. As part of Workforce Healthcare's pledge to the NSP, we are providing a free toll-free number to everyone or anyone who has been affected by GBV in any way, and this includes the perpetrators. As Prof said, we need to go back to those who are actually, causing these issues, and we need to also provide support so that we can change them or we can assist them, to prevent this from happening in future. Also, a mother of both a son and a daughter, I often think to myself, am I doing the right thing when it comes to raising my son? And am I also educating my daughter enough that she knows that it is not okay to ever be in a situation that a lot of women find themselves in? Advocate Rory has mentioned that we find that there's a lot of people who, where even the executives, you have a split between male and female. And this is something that I strongly, talk to my child about, to say to her that, you know what, you need to be able to be strong yourself. You need to be able to be an independent woman. But having said that, you need to also be able to speak out for those who cannot speak out. So my role today is to just say that we are offering this counseling service to anyone and everyone, those who are affected by the after effects, as well as those who are going through the situation and need support and need guidance on what to do to get out of the situations that they may face. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Navanya. Chris, I saw your hand up, but let me just start also with a question to you directly. We speak of all hands on deck and the policy plans and so on. You've pledged 6 million Rand of your support to this movement and to this program. As a business, how do you justify that to your shareholders, number one, writing off 6 million Rand? Why is this so important? And I'm going to probably come back to Serena to say, what will it take? What will be the threshold for any business to start seeing some sort of movement in the needle of what needs to be done? Chris, let me start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. I didn't have my hand up. I was clapping Navanya in terms of providing the opportunity for perpetrators and victims to have somewhere to go, because I think the awareness is important.
I hope you're not losing your connection. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's just important, I think, what Navanya was saying, so I was just clapping. But in terms of organizations, I believe we all need to do what we can with what we have. It's a critical social issue that business has to get behind. And I think the professor earlier was alluding to this, that we've got to remember that our employees are whole people with whole lives. Gender-based violence isn't left at the front door when people leave home to get to work. GBV is being brought into the workplace, and in some cases it originates there. So we think it's really important to create a productive and healthy society. We think it's important to start by starting. Do something. Do something big or do something small, but do something, I think, is very important.
Serena, I was just asking, perhaps by way of looking at the numbers that you've seen, some data that's come through, what kind of movement would have to happen within organizations, within companies? Chris, they've pledged 6 million Rand. What would need to happen in any organization to see some sort of movement in change of behavior, in values and so on?
I think for me, it's about an authentic commitment to want to make a difference. I think so often when there's all of these kind of social issues that we bring into business and business sort of put themselves behind it, it's often compliance driven. And I think the moment it's compliance driven, it's not really a sustainable initiative. For me, it's really, I think, and I concur with Chris, it needs to be just a start, whether how big or how small it is actually perhaps a bit more immaterial, but it's that authentic commitment to want to make a difference. And not only want to make a difference for your own staff, but also to the greater society. And I think what we do see in more and more research pieces is that's actually what the end customer also expect. People have got choice, and I want to do and support the business that actually creates a difference and to make a difference in a bigger and a better South Africa. So I think it's about that authentic will to want to contribute and just to be able to start somewhere, and perhaps also in a very practical way. I think sometimes if we start off with maybe too great ambitions, it's often difficult to sustain them, and it's difficult to really put yourselves behind that. But if it's something that can perhaps just even start very practically, I think then it becomes ingrained in the values of what the organization stands for, and that creates sustainability, and essentially I think that's more important.
I saw Jenny's hand up, but I can't see her anymore. I'll probably come back to you. Rory, you pointed to the fact that you have a greater number of women in your organization. And I wonder, you know, as opposed to just money, the values and culture that you cultivate in your organization. So what would happen if we all knew in the organization that I am a victim of gender-based violence? How do we make sure that I'm not stigmatized, that you don't shift responsibility to my other colleagues and say, oh, well, you know, Pamela's a little bit soft, she's a bit fragile, she can't handle pressure, you know, we can't give her too much. In other words, also very career limiting. How do we manage that kind of tension between also recognizing my abilities as an employee, as a partner in the business, and understanding that I do have my other pressures at home? I am maybe a victim of gender-based violence.
Well, the one thing that we do is that we are very much a value-driven organization. So what we try to inculcate among staff is transparency. We also inculcate openness in terms of how they communicate. And therefore, we also look at how we can support when these are made aware to us within our organization. For example, we have in-house counseling. We have very much supportive programs that we offer to staff. We have a private company called Careways Group that comes in and speaks to staff about such matters. And therefore, we also like to see that as part of our EXCO responsibilities, support staff who are victims of such. But not only that, we take it much further. We actually go out and do, if we become aware, we go out and ensure that we try and help the staff as much as possible to take the matter further if they so wish to do so. So it's a matter of us within our little space of 500 staff, ensuring that the women that we have play a meaningful role in the production that they do. I think very much Navania mentioned in her remarks about the impact that it can have not only on the home, but it can also have an impact in the work that they do, to ensure and to support them, that they know that the entity cares, the entity will take action, and that there is not a scourge if they bring it forward. We have these private confidential lines that they can speak to psychologists. We have this fully within our organization for it to do so. We get reports that are given to us on a quarterly basis at the EXCO level as to, not by names, but who has reported such, so that we can have programs that are targeted and look at where the hotspots are when it comes to issues around such matters. There's various types of matters, but when it comes to issues along the line of gender-based violence or any other violence that is put through to the organization and it is reported to us, we therefore have the means and the capability to address them in an open, transparent means within the CIPC.
Jenny, I see your hand's been up for a while. I'm going to read your question if I can't see you. You do talk about prosecutors speaking to offenders and their lawyers before speaking to victims. This needs to change, you say. And I think you're speaking to one of the pillars in terms of what the justice system needs to do to try and help us all navigate us to a better outcome.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get the unmute side of things. It was actually a direct thing because I got quite excited when I saw Chris being outdoor media and taxi rank media and all the rest, because that was one of my passions, is to educate the public as to what their rights are when it comes to reporting matters to the police station and what the police's responsibilities are. So it was more of a direct challenge to Chris and his company. Are they prepared to advertise around the country in English and in Afrikaans and in the local language what the victims' rights are when they get to the police station, and also what the police's responsibilities are? I have a whole document that I have formulated with regard to what should go into police stations, and I've been lobbying at Women's Parliament for about over 4 years, and every year it goes through a committee and gets watered down to the police need to be educated better on dealing with gender-based violence. That's not good enough. The public needs to know what their rights are, and they also need to know what the responsibilities are of the police. And the only way you can get that out there is visually, that the public know it and they're educated about it on a daily basis and they see it wherever they go. And the police are also on notice, knowing that they have to follow through on their responsibilities.
Kronya is also making the same point. The systems are all failing. If we do not solve the problem with the police and the courts, we will not see a change soon enough. Sarina, do you want to just maybe add on to that?
Yes, I think for me, pretty much like I've said, it's a systemic issue. And I think as much as education is something that needs to be quite wide stretched, and it needs to start somewhere across the entire system. So I think it's also for how we deal with victims when they do report a problem, how quickly we can actually deal with it from a case point of view. I just think it drags out so long that I think it's almost a trauma in itself that just keeps repeating itself. So I think there is just so much that needs to be done. But again, and I think I've spoken about it last night as well on the show with you, I think it's something that needs to start also with self-worth, self-confidence. How do we raise our children like that? How do we bring it into school processes? I think too often still the focus is very much quite a reactive one. And it's about how to drive change very, very proactively that needs to form part of the solution.
That balance, Navanya, is going to be quite tricky. Companies are faced with a lot of pressure at the moment. Employees are going through a lot at the moment as well. I would suggest you give the whole day off to people to just deal with their emotions. It's not practical, it's not doable. How do we strike that balance, Vanya?
It's important that employees feel, you know, as Rory said, that they feel that they have an outlet, that they feel that the organization is there to support them. You know, over the past 2 years, thanks to COVID, mental health has become a really big talking point. With COVID, we've had people, you know, cooped up in homes where they could be affected by GBV, and we've seen the numbers increase as providers such as ourselves. We've seen the numbers increase. So what's important is for organizations to be mindful. And I think, you know, it's important to have organizations such as ourselves where you do have that outlet of free and confidential counseling. It's so important. I mean, many people can't afford to go to a psychologist, to go for counseling. Whereas if corporates offer services such as this, it allows them the opportunity to be able to access counseling. Often when you have a wellness or an EAP program as well, they also have access to legal advice, which is something which goes back to what Jenny is saying, what Kone is saying around the justice system. And finally, they also often have access to financial advice. You find that a lot of people or a lot of women feel that they are trapped in the situation, not just because of the actual violence that they face, but also the financial abuse that they face. And they don't know where to go, where to turn, and how to get out of the situation. So by having support available to the employees, you may not see the value in rands and cents, but you will definitely see it in the bottom line through the increase in productivity, through the fact that your employees are actually having access to services that they wouldn't normally have access to. And to create awareness.
Rory, it's some of the requests that have come through to you have been quite bold, you know, barring people from registering companies and so on, and not being part of big companies as directors and so on. I mean, is that feasible? Is that something that this economy can actually live through with?
It's quite a constitutional matter. People have a right to trade. There is no barring in law for, unfortunately, for aspects of gender-based violence, unless it has led to some form of criminal prosecution. Then the Companies Act specifically speaks to that. But I would like to add another dimension to this. You know, in companies, there's something called shareholder activism, all right, where it's not only about rands and cents, it's also about the sustainability of the company when you speak to the social impact that it has on broader society. All right. So when I mentioned earlier about the issue around the Social and Ethics Committee, which plays a very meaningful role in the reporting system of companies, they should have aspects like that. Has any aspects of our staff reported aspects of gender-based violence? You know, is there a scourge that is tarnishing our reputation because it seems to be widespread that managers are beating up their wives, and it's been reported to HR, and that should form part of the social and ethics form of reporting to the board. Then the board can make meaningful decisions as to how they go about and deal with those issues, and the shareholders can make decisions. And therefore, it's this holistic, multifaceted picture one must have when it comes to economic activity versus social impact and social responsibility. That's what needs to be done when it comes to reporting. And therefore, you can see about barring people from that way. If suddenly the CFO seems to be abusing his wife, but he's very good at the numbers, what difference does it make? He should be held accountable for that, and it should come through in the reporting lines. So therefore, we need to have much more of this being brought to the fore, and therefore decisions being made and activism being part of how does one go about run, manage, and report in companies.
That's all good and well, Rory, but I suspect Chris will not be able to tell a client who he knows is a perpetrator to F off, even if he knows that it's somebody that they play golf with, because he's likely to lose a very 6 million he's adding to this program. So I don't quite know if that will work. I know what Chris can do within his organization, but will peers be willing to hear each other out without using power dynamics? Chris?
Yeah, I think we're going to need more time to unpack that. That's going to take a lot longer to unpack, and I'm going to take a sip on that one. But I am going to respond to Jenny and say that just her challenge around media space So we are providing that 6 million rand in inventory on media space. And it's going to be up to the folks from the President's Office and the GBV NSP in terms of the actual messaging around that. So, you know, we are making the space available. The message can be put out across all of our digital networks. And as I say, we reach millions of people daily. So, you know, if Jenny wants to talk to those folks about, you know, what she believes would help in terms of the actual messaging and the public knowing their rights and so on, because I think she makes some very good points, then absolutely. But my point was, it's not up to me in terms of what the actual message, the craft of the actual message is going to come from the President's Office and the GBV NSP.
No, Chris, I really wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I wasn't specifically speaking to you. I'm just trying to make the point that in as much as, you know, there's a lot we can do, there's also a lot that would have to change culturally in the entire society for us to get some movement going. It's actually far more trickier than all of us raising our hands and saying that we are against gender-based violence. And maybe, Serena, you can speak to that, that it's quite easy to say it, but in real terms, very difficult to execute.
But I think it's actually exactly what needs to happen. So I think to raise things and to bring it to the surface, it requires a certain level of courage and a certain level of transparency. We've walked away from a very significant account exactly because of this, I suppose, harassment that has happened. And I think it is when business actually steps up and be courageous and make tough decisions and be transparent about the topics that is difficult and uncomfortable to speak about. I think that's essentially when we can start driving a difference. It is not always practical, I understand that. I do think it is sometimes difficult, but I think that's the role of business. The role of business is to lead by example. It is to be transparent. It is to drive the tough conversations and bring it to the fore. And if we can't do it as leaders, how can we expect our staff to do it? I think it also puts in context equal pay, equal opportunities, but there's so much we can do as business. But essentially, we need to commit to the cause authentically and drive it transparently. If we want our staff to also speak up and to be free and to challenge issues head on that they might be facing and this kind of support that they need.
Navanya, it's easy for the boss to call people out. Who calls the boss out?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, at the end of the day, we often say that we need to practice what we preach. You know, and I think that it's important, you know, I see that Tiki has mentioned we need to break the silence on GBV. And I think, you know, sometimes we have to lead from the bottom as well. So our employees need to also tell us what's important to the leaders and to actually show them the effects that it has, you know, in terms of the workplace. And start with something like sexual harassment in the workplace. I mean, this too is a form of gender-based violence, you know, it can get to that point. So start there, start pushing the right initiatives within the organization, you know, and demonstrate this to the rest of the people and the rest of the corporates, and you'll be able to get it right.
Rory, you spoke a little bit about, you know, it's not that simple. We just can't say to someone, you don't have the right to open a company and so on, and unless it's a criminal case. The problem with gender-based violence is the spectrum. It is so wide. How do we then start, you know, understanding the full complexities of the spectrum and also be quite careful about managing the balance between punishment and rehabilitation?
I'm not too much of an expert in the area, but I think it goes back to the role that I keep pushing, is that the role that a company plays in society and the role that those who lead in companies play when it comes to outing those who are responsible for such acts, and also to look at how holistically the company can play that social impact aspect when it deals with its business. So it takes various players within society, takes various players within the economy, because remember, the one thing that one of the audience said quite earlier on was that we must look at all aspects that gender-based violence touches on. It's not only the aspect of the violent act, but also the economic act, because a person might withhold funds from the wife, or withhold funds from the family because of certain abuse aspects. And therefore, how does this whole ecosystem of trying to look at the impact that it has comes together. And I think that is the reason how collaboration and the partnership that we're discussing now, which must obviously result in some sort of tangible results. That's why the conversation must continue. It's an ongoing, not 16 days, it's throughout existence, right? The conversations must continue, but it must also relate to policy changes. Look, something that you said earlier, Pamela, when I think somebody raised it in the audience, which speaks to policy. How do we stop a person who's been outed as a serial violent, gender-based violent perpetrator, but he's a successful business person? How do we stop him from dealing with that? Because he has an impact on society by the acts that he does, but he also has an impact on the economy because of the successful business that he has. How do we draw those fine lines? Those are policy discussions that need to occur. Policy discussions must have private and public participation in how do we deal with that, and therefore come back with tangible results. We can talk good stuff that Christian is and the work that he's doing in terms of the billboards and all of that, and I don't mean to take away from that, but it has to result in something more than that. It has to result in policy changes, which is vitally important to getting this message across and to making sure that there's a difference that has to occur.
No, you're absolutely right, Rory. And I'll just maybe ask you to wrap, but just consider this as well. The power dynamics are quite a big thing. As society, all of us, just even believing the idea that a big athlete, an important person that we all celebrate is a perpetrator, it's hard. It's very, very hard. It was hard for us watching the Oscar trial because it's, you know, this was our hero. This was our national pride. And so accepting that this individual can also become a perpetrator, very tough on a nation. And how do we also react to that? And what do we deal with when we are faced with that? How do we manage ourselves in dealing with that scenario? I'll give you perhaps a minute or two for all of you to wrap up and maybe some action plans. I know, Chris, you've already spoken quite clearly about what you're doing, and you've put real numbers to the table. But perhaps let me go back to you, Navanya. Let's start with you. Action plans. What do you think is required to happen now going forward?
So I think it needs to become a discussion point in many organizations. There needs to be a lot of awareness around it. I have found that sometimes you go into an organization and you do training on domestic violence or gender-based violence, and suddenly you have a spike in calls. And that's because sometimes the women don't really realize that they are actually affected by this. So they think that, oh, he loves me, and this is what has happened. It's not going to happen again. So to create education, awareness around this, and to promote this. And also from our side, as I mentioned, from Workforce Healthcare side, we have dedicated our call center, which is staffed by registered professionals, psychologists, social workers, to have a 24-hour, 24/7, 365 days a year support available to anyone affected by GBV. And that could be, like I said, to the victim, the perpetrator, and in the reality of cases, in the sad cases, also to those who have been affected by it and have lost loved ones. So this is our pledge to what we are doing, and this is open to everyone and will be open. I know that part of what Chris's team will do is also to promote this number, which we shared on the screen earlier, and I'm hoping we will share it again. But it's a toll-free number, so you don't have to have data, you don't have to have airtime to call us. This is something that we are making available so that we can provide that support to assist people that require our services.
Thank you very much, Navanya. Rory, your parting shot?
Look, I believe that women empowerment plays a vital element in all of this, right? So we need to raise the bar when it comes to our efforts in order to empower women in society and also to empower them in the economy. You know, we always say that women are natural nurturers when it comes to children, so they also will play this developmental and safety role when these acts are occurring in the household. So it's vitally important that we do that, and it's vitally important that we get all the role players to ensure that that is specifically done. You know, we at the CIPC, we at the heart of economic growth and transformation. So we will drive this. We have programs in place to look at the registration of companies by women. We have programs in place to encourage these registrations, and we have education and awareness activities to make sure that women take on this role of starting, running, and being economically active more than they are when it comes to company registrations and company and the building of companies. And therefore, we see that as part of our role. The awareness of this problem must not be seen to be 16 days. As I said, it's an ongoing, and therefore we have to ongoing have discussions, ongoing have empowerment exercises, and make sure that we deal with a lot of eradication programs thereat. And the message must be seen to be taken to everywhere, to the shop floor. As I said, shareholder activism, to know exactly what needs to be done, to ask the right questions, to question when this has been raised within companies, and therefore it plays that empowerment and advocacy role when it comes to how reporting is done and action is to be taken. So we see that as part of what we do. We will continue to spread the message, and we thank you very much for being part of this panel.
Thank you. Chris, your parting shot.
Thanks, Pamela. Just to briefly come back to your earlier question, and I wasn't trying to dodge it, it just didn't feel like we had enough time to deal with such a massive topic, but of course we must call it out. Of course we must call it out, whether it's our clients, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's our partners. We have to practice what we preach. We can't just pay lip service to this. And as leaders and businesses and individuals, we have to have moral courage and integrity. And we have to put principle before profits. Of course, we have to do that. And I want to leave with a quote from one of my sports heroes, from Siya Kolisi. And this is what Siya Kolisi said on the topic. If we educate our sons, we won't have to protect our daughters. We won't have to teach them to defend themselves. We need to show our sons two things. First, that women are their equals and need to be respected and protected rather than attacked. Second, we have to show our sons that it's not unmanly to show their feelings, that fear, disappointment, and anxiety are totally normal, and that experiencing them doesn't make you less of a man. So that's from Sia, which I think is incredibly powerful. For Advantage, would like to take the opportunity to challenge other responsible corporate citizens to get behind the message, to get involved, and to start by something. So start by starting, Rob. Start by starting and do something. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Serena.
I think we need to be conscious about our gender norms that are harmful and of the adverse impact on individuals and society at large across the population, from the youngest to the eldest. I think we need to start by challenging our own beliefs and our own behaviors. Then it's about opening it up, becoming more transparent about it, taking a stance, especially in business. I think what you accept, you condone, and we need to take that very, very, very seriously and very responsibly. As a research house, I think our commitment is to continue with the longitudinal survey, which we will fund. That doesn't have to be 16 days or 365 days, but that should actually continue, so that we can track where we are as society with regards to our understanding of GBV, and to monitor and understand what is changing, if anything at all, and what seems to be most impactful in terms of driving the change that we need.
Thank you all for really your frank and candid conversations that you've brought to the fore, being very open about some of the solutions, and also just being able to admit to the fact that we don't have all the answers, and this is why this is so important. So I really want to appreciate every single one of our panelists. Thank you very much for your contribution, and all of you who also sent in your questions and your comments. I do want to bring in here now Shared Value Africa Initiative CEO Tiki Barnard, just to wrap up for us and maybe just give us her last remarks.
Thank you, Pamela, and morning all. Firstly, thank you for this conversation and this dialogue today. I want to say thank you to Chris, Serena, Navanya, Rory, Sibs, and Prof. Gustav. And thank you to Vuyo, Lolo, and the technical team. The Shared Value Africa Initiative and the It's Not Okay movement, as a member of the GBV NSP Collaborative and supporting various pillars, want to thank everybody in the ecosystem for the work that they do. Fighting gender-based violence is all of our responsibility, and we all need to own part of it, and we all have a role to play, no matter how big or small. The entire focus of this campaign that Chris was touching on and that we're talking on about, and with SIBS sharing the GBV pillars revolve around influencing policy change so that perpetrators can no longer hide and that we prevent them from being appointed into positions of power. So just quickly, after hearing everybody today, I want to reiterate the It's Not Okay movement mantra that we took from Ban Ki-moon, who was the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. And he said, there is one universal truth. Violence against women is never acceptable, never excusable, and never tolerable. So we are the ones that can make the difference and shift the dial on gender-based violence and femicide. So my plea in closing to all of you today is that we consciously and intentionally stop the silence on gender-based violence, as it's not okay. That we consciously and intentionally make sure that perpetrators do not hide and get away with it. Our silence as individuals, as a society, as the private sector, as the government, means that we condone gender-based violence. And keeping quiet is not okay. To our leaders out there, please, let's consciously create less patriarchal environments. Do not brush over sexual harassment. Create policies and practices that will demonstrate that as organizations, we believe in equality and in supporting SDG 5 gender equality. Thank you again to one and all that took the time to be with us this morning. Thank you, Kaya, 959, Provantage, Workforce Healthcare, CIPC, Ask Africa, for answering our call and supporting our campaign. Thank you for participating and attending. And I want to wish you all a blessed festive season. And please, as a collective, let us commit to eradicating gender-based violence, as it's not okay. Thank you.
Tiki, thank you so much.
It's not okay.
It's not okay. It really is not okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
for making the time. Thank you for being so candid, so frank. We thank you all, and do go to the website and maybe just have one. And if you want to contribute, there is all the direction there to assist you with how to navigate the site as well. Thanks, everybody. Have yourself a fantastic holiday.
Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota mandani, ayi olengos, city lengos, Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota sabelani. Fazi bayalila, ayo lengos, city lengos, iyo lengos. Jatana zankosi, upenduli mitana zoa yetu, izikalo yasifu, abafazi bayalila. Siyatandaza nkosi, bedlwengulwa, bebulalwa, bekhalela ubomi babo. Ngenelela, ngenelela, ngenelela. Emadoda mamelani, emadoda ngandani, ayo lengos, city lengos, iyo lengos. Emadoda sabelani, emadoda sabelani, emadoda ngandani, iyo lengos, iyo lengos, iyo lengos. Emadoda mamelani, emadoda sabelani.